Welcome to Talking Mopars, episode number 141. Welcome back, my friends. This is part 2 of the live-streamed episode that I recorded this past Saturday night with Jonny Mopar and Jeremy from Sorta Stock Mopars, picking up where we left off in part 1. So without further ado, if you are a Mopar enthusiast, then you are in the right place. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned in to the best Mopar enthusiast-driven podcast on planet Earth, and I am your host, Chris Albrecht, better known as the Mopar Hunter, and this is Talking Mopars.
You're listening to Talking Mopars with the Mopar Hunter, your direct connection to all things Mopar.
Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, I have to ask you guys a question. Is your Mopar protected? Whether it's sitting outside in the elements or inside the safe confines of your man cave, it's important to keep your Mopar protected. That's why I'm excited to announce that I'm now affiliated with a company offering an amazing solution for vehicle protection. They have everything from basic indoor shields all the way up to the top-of-the-line platinum shields, offering the very best protection to keep your Mopar safe, both indoors and outdoors, from elements like dust, water, snow, and yes, even UV rays. Their products are guaranteed to fit and are backed by a great warranty. To find out more about my new affiliate, please visit TalkingMopars.com, click on the Affiliates tab, and follow the link to their website. If you need protection for your Mopar, don't worry, we got you covered. Let me ask you guys this. So let's say you had a $5,000 budget. How much different would this race have been?
Way different. I think Johnny could tell you too. It would have been a whole different animal.
What would you have done?
Go ahead, Johnny. You want to go first?
I'll say I think it would be way different for Jeremy, but I don't think it would have been much different from us because I think we pushed our car all the way to its limit. You know, as far as if we wanted to go more than 200 shot, like if we just threw that out the window and just said, well, screw it, we're not going to adhere to the rule and we're just going to try to throw more power at it. Like, I don't think that motor can handle more power. And then going to a totally different engine would be more expensive and, maybe get it into that $5,000 budget, but it would just take more time, and I was content with the direction of our car. So I don't think on our end, it would have been it wouldn't have changed much, and even when we were conspiracy theorying on Jeremy's side, we were still stuck. It was like, I know he's playing these head games with me, but it doesn't mean anything because like, if I think he's going to like come out and upstage us, it doesn't change our build. Our build was, it's like, I don't have extra money. I don't have extra parts. I don't have extra time. So it's like, it doesn't change anything for me. We're sticking to plan A, and we're going to get the nitrous system on there and we're going to stick to that. So I don't think it would have changed I can't say for sure, but I don't think it would have changed our build.
I think that turbo would have definitely been on the 318 had we had more money in the budget, but I would have had to utilize a lot of that money through the systems of a shop because I just didn't have the folks down here. Most of my teammates had to travel really far. Only one person lives here in San Diego. And so I would have had to help a shop like fab up just the exhaust coming out to the flange because it just takes too much time. And I could have had the turbo mounted and even the plate. In fact, I don't know if I have it behind me. No, I have it mocked up for sitting underneath the carb so the carb can be in the same position. But could have had a shop fab that for me. And so I think the higher budget would have compensated for the time crunch that we had, at least on our end. But, overall, I'm still pretty happy we got it with that warmed over Magnum. I'm actually really impressed by the 318. This is the first time I've actually really played with the 318. Usually it's 360 or 340.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a 318 believer now, especially the Magnum motor. They're fantastic.
How much boost were you planning on running?
So in a draw through configuration, you're really limited to 10. like
Yeah.
10's the max you can do because you have so much heat going into it.
Yeah.
Turbo's sitting right there next to the carb. You can't run an intercooler because you get all the fuel dropping out of suspension, right? Just filling up. And placement of the turbo is really huge too. I actually spent a lot of time on the Volkswagen forums because a lot of those guys in those old Beetles are running turbos. And where they have the turbo in line with the carburetor, like, man, everything. And a lot of them trash on the draw-through setups because the blow-through is so much better. But there's still tons of info out there on the draw-through. It's just you got to hit up the forums because most people nowadays aren't playing with draw-through setups.
Yeah.
So how does the draw-through work compared to the blow-through? I mean, I didn't even know there was a draw-through. You know, I always thought of like a blow-through, which is why blow-through is where the carburetor is inside of a chamber, right? And everything's pushing
chamber,
through.
even there's a top hat.
Okay. And I know you got to modify the carburetors to do that, which is why I was thinking you were probably bullshitting us. But so how does the what did you call it?
The draw-through
Work. Yeah.
Draw-through works really similar to like your old school Roots blowers, right? It sucks in air and fuel from the carb into the turbine of the turbocharger. Does a really good job of atomizing the fuel and then pumps back into the engine that mixture of air and fuel. So what you get is you get a really fantastic running engine at full throttle. But like when you're around town and you're trying to just, ease it into lights and whatnot, it's really hard to tune and the fuel ends up dropping out of suspension. Depending on your configuration, it'll sit in the turbo. So it's not the best. The old school stuff like the Chrysler 2.2s, they were draw through the, GNX and all that. You have to have carbon seals, or you're supposed to have carbon seals in your turbo for that. So it doesn't suck in oil from the turbo. You can't really find those nowadays unless you go to a junkyard for an old school one. So I was just going to send it with the regular eBay turbo. And if it sucked in oil, well. But that's pretty much it. You configure it to where it sucks in the fuel and air, pump it back in the motor, and you just make sure that you lock out your timing similar to the nitrous system. And I was just going to have the exhaust go 90 up straight through the hood. And I was going to do this whole video, and I'm still going to actually do it for the duct tape, the rematch, but I'm just going to have the exhaust go straight up through the hood, and I'm going to make a cheapo hood out of fiberglass and aluminum foil. Home Depot special, $60.
Why not have it come out of the gills of the GTS hood?
Yeah. Cut the hood.
I'm gonna have to cut the hood for the turbo to sit up there.
I didn't really piss everybody off.
Cummins turbo.
Let me ask you guys this: how do you guys line up your cars? And what I mean by that is, how do you prefer to stage? I've always been told that you want to, if you're a last yellow guy, you want to shallow stage it so that you can hammer it and not worry as much about red light versus deep stage.
Yeah, for me, I can't. I want to say those guys had suggested deep staging, or I don't remember, but I honestly don't give it. I don't try.
Yeah.
I just stage when the yellow light, the second yellow comes on. I just hit the brakes and I stop. So I don't know if that's deep or not.
They're those guys that creep to the pre-stage, and then just creep until they just trigger the stage light. And then they know, okay,
it's like
shallow stage. Yeah.
That's what I was doing. I was deep staging because I knew I was going to launch on the yellow. But that's kind of how I always stage it because I like to just keep it consistent.
Yeah.
I'm not playing with power enough to where it's I think really super critical. I could have shallow staged it, but my reaction time was pretty good, so I was pretty happy with it.
For those of you left in the chat that drag race, how do you guys stage your cars? Answer in the chat. I'm curious.
I always leave on the yellow. The racing I've done is kind of like what we were doing that Friday night. It's street cars, street racers, or more average people like driving street cars, not full on race cars. Usually the full on race cars come out Saturday night. So when you're racing the guys on Friday night and it's the street cars, like I'd say 90% of those guys can't cut a good light to save their ass. I mean, they're horrible out there. I've had guys I've left and I thought they broke, and only to see them finally go, and it's like, God, there's like 2 buses between us,
I've never understood that. I've never understood why they sleep.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how it happens, but I imagine a lot of people are waiting for the last green to come on. Like they leave when they see the green, and then they're just slow on top of that, and by then you're 3 or 4 car lengths. You could be as much as 3 or 4 car lengths out, and we're talking street cars, so on the slow side. So it's a lot.
Well, and that's why they say to leave on the last yellow, because the human reaction time is so slow that it should give you just enough, Interesting. Yeah, I've always been curious about, people's philosophies on lining up and staging their cars.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. With the $3,000 budget, if you guys could go back, what would you change the next time around if you could redo it all?
I'll let Jeremy go.
I'd probably do more time, to be honest, because as fun as it was, now looking back on it, it is extremely stressful. Not just on you, but it's also stressful on the family, right? Because now I've got to be in the garage and I'm trying to do this, and I had COVID for like a portion of that. In fact, that whole rear end assembly and installation, I was quarantining in a garage with COVID, still trying to push to get it done. It would have been a lot more enjoyable, I think, had we had probably double the time limit, maybe 6 months.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we had less of a. Well, I mean, if Jeremy put all the turbo stuff on his car, I think we would have had an easier job than him. Because we got pretty much everything done that we needed to get done. We had to push really hard for it. It was stressful on the family as well. But then we had no test time. It would have been nice to test the car and have all these problems. Like I said, that the 2 weeks prior, we were shooting for that date, but there was just so many loose ends on the car. I didn't have it. I couldn't take it to the track. It wasn't ready. And once you miss that Friday, it's like, well, the next race day is the day we race. So it was done. I couldn't race the Friday after, but it would have been nice just to have more breathing room, more time. It wouldn't have changed our build, but it would have been nice to just freaking bring it down a few notches,
I wanted to have like 2 videos out a week. That was kind of my goal, to match your timeline and your build. But I was really only able to get 1 video out like every 7 to 10 days was like the max I could do. Because, aside from building the car, remember, we're both recording this on our channels. So,
yeah,
I mean, the camshaft video, I really wanted to do a good video for those guys. And I probably had 12 hours into editing. I'm building all this on iMovie on my phone, and that's really how much time I had to put into that video to get it to work right. It's so much footage doing the full tour. I was probably there for like 4 hours. So, it's stuff like that also eats up. And I think a lot of people that are looking at the competition and the rules are probably like, oh, I could have done that in 3 months. It's like, well, try filming it and recording it too. It's
a different animal when you add content in it. If you could just concentrate on the build, there's so many different factors involved. And when you're talking about family, like today, all I was doing today was hauling stuff to my storage unit. And the last run I did, my daughter was literally holding on to my leg and would not let me go. And it was like, okay, do I break this precious little girl's heart and say, Daddy's got to go move his shit into the storage unit right now? It was a moment where, because I felt bad about having to just forfeit the No Name Nationals. But today, when she did that, and I realized there's no fuck the storage unit, I don't have to go. I'm renting the fucking thing. I can go whenever I want.
Right.
the no pressure thing, God, it feels good. I don't like pressure. So with that, I got to segue into a question for Jonny Mopar. Johnny, now be honest, was there any moment during this whole thing where you thought, I wish Jeremy hadn't fucking called me out? Why did he call me out?
I never asked why necessarily, but yeah, I did have lots of regret. I'd say, because we talked about it. When you and I went to the mats and stuff, Jeremy had already approached me over this thing, and he wanted to make it 3 months. So we had kind of worked out the rules and all this stuff, about 5 months ahead of the race. So we couldn't really touch the cars for those 2 months. And during that time, there's no pressure. But I would say after the first month, and I feel like we squandered a lot of that time in that first month. So it put a lot more pressure into the second and the third month. So by that second month, I was done. I was like, it's too much shit. You cannot foresee everything that you need to do that goes into a car. And we had so many problems with Dorothy. Like, it felt like every step forward was 2 steps back. It was like we would finish some major thing and then be like, all right, cool. In your head, you're like, I'm like 5 bolts away from getting this done. And then you're already thinking about the next thing you got to get done in the car. And then you find out there's problems with what you just did. And you got to take shit apart and put it back, fix it. And it takes days. It eats up days. And you're like, now I'm days behind, and then like you said, on the editing stuff, it's like, I was spending a lot of late nights. It's like, well, I can't really work on the car at night, so I'm going to do all my editing at night, and I'm doing it every day, trying to spend, so it doesn't consume too much time during the day or on the weekends. It's like every single night I'm going to do something little, just keep hammering, and then like get a video and then freaking throw it out there. It's like, oh, that one's good enough. It's a nice bow on it, out.
So here we are. The first race has already been decided. Jeremy, I see your trophy. It's a mighty fine valve cover you got there. I like it a lot. It might be worth something someday. You never know.
It's got some big signatures on it.
It's got some pretty cool signatures on it. Johnny put in some effort to get some of those things, man. We were at Matt's and he was going around. I thought it was pretty cool. I'm curious to see where you guys go from here. So duct tape, I've heard that mentioned a couple times. The rematch at duct tape. So are there rules to this? Is it balls to the wall? What do we got going on for this rematch?
So, having felt all that pressure with the rules and the budget and whatnot, I think we both were like unanimous in this when we were talking about it, the night of the race. When we agreed on duct tape, it was like, let's just run it.
Yeah.
You do you, I'll do me. Let's just meet there and run the cars. Whatever you want to do in the next 90 days, and we'll see where it lands. So the ceiling's off. We just get to have fun with the car and, run what we got.
His dad even said, so we could run the Viper motor in it. I said, go for it. If you want to do that.
Yeah, there's no way.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah, he makes those comments. And I'm looking at the work. I'm like, oh, no. I mean, the Barracuda's been sitting on jack stands for 2 years now.
Let me ask you something, Jeremy. Was there any point during this whole thing where you were like, man, why did I do this challenge? I should have just,
Yeah, probably like every week of the second and third month.
Yeah.
It was every time I had to ask my wife, I was like, babe, I need this weekend. And that was like the story of my life for almost every week. I was like, I got to do this. I got to go to the junkyard. I got to get this. And even she's like, you timed this when we have a new baby? I was like,
oh, man.
I was going to be off work for 8 weeks, and the race was the last week of my paternity leave. And man, yeah, definitely was thinking we should probably do this later on in the year. But I was actually right now still, I'm really glad we did it for a couple of reasons. One, I get to have a bunch of fond memories about having the pressure and doing this whole thing, but also it really helped motivate me jump back into building cars on a full force.
Yeah.
The Barracuda's been sitting on jack stands. It's such a big project. I've never taken a build to that level caliber, full fab, the tunnel, the firewall. And it's not just a stock Viper V10 too. It's going to have about 600 horsepower naturally aspirated. So like, I'm not going to get to enjoy that car for a little while to do it right.
Yeah.
I knew doing this with the Hoopty would end, with either us blowing a motor and just having a great time, or us having a car that still ran and being able to enjoy it. And that's what we both have right now. I get to go to a car show, get laughed at, but I get to be there with something and just enjoy it again.
Our whole build started with the intent to do a cheap build for club. There's like 4 of us that went in and bought the car.
Mm-hmm.
No, 5. I think it was 5, $200 a piece. And we wanted to take the car to Zip Tie Drags. At the time, it was Zip Tie Drags when we bought the car. And the whole, doing this build didn't really change. I mean, it just, what we were going to do with the car anyway, go with the big block, get it a little bit faster, take it to the track, have fun with the car, not worry about it. It's not a valuable car, not putting a lot of money on the line. All the parts were donated to the car. So when Jeremy approached me with this, it fit so perfectly with what we were already going to do with the car. So doing this build helped us get that car to that point because it had stalled. I mean, we've already had the car, I don't know, 3 years or so, 2 or 3 years. And, we worked on it a few times. Like we got the disc brakes on it up front. We put a new gas tank in it. Probably not much beyond that, but the 383's been sitting in the garage for a while, and honestly, if this build hadn't come along, it would still be sitting over there in the corner of the garage and the car would still have the poly in it, and probably wouldn't have moved forward. So this whole exercise basically pushed the car to its, what it was intended to be. So I am grateful for that. I am glad. And I'm definitely glad it's over with. I mean, we finished our car Thursday afternoon. So the day before race day. And all I was looking forward to was Saturday to just get it all over with. I didn't care if we won or if we lost. I just wanted to get it over with so I can get to Saturday and finally relax and not have to work on anything, Yeah.
What's funny about this whole thing from the outside looking in and not being a participant or a competitor is I was thinking about it, and you hear this argument when it comes to reality television, how it's all staged and all the mishaps and shit are staged. And I'm sitting here after it's all said and done, looking at it from both sides, because I've heard both your sides, and I'm going, that would have made a great, little series of episodes there, because there was so much shit that happened between the onset of the challenge, the conspiracy theories, the mishaps, and then being at the track. You actually both got the cars to the track only for one run, and everything goes wrong. That to me, like, you couldn't script a TV show as drama filled as that. Just the conspiracy theories alone was like, this is great. And then to hear, and I don't get me wrong, I was super disappointed. I wanted to see both the cars run. That would have been awesome. But looking at it now, I'm like, of course something like that was going to happen. With everything leading up, it's like, of course some bullshit was going to happen. Yeah. And it makes it even more interesting because, like I said, you can't write this because now there's going to be a rematch and there are no fucking rules. Just so you got the first part and now you get to see, okay, now I can promise you, Murphy's going to have to sit this one out. We're going to have to see these two cars really go,
Well, I hope so. I am worried about our car because we've ran it with no oil pressure so many times. I'm like, I'm afraid to pull the pan and look at the bearings on it, you know?
Keep that 2050 weight in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you guys feeling the pressure all over again now? Because you're like, shit, 90 days until duct tape.
Oh, it's totally relieved for me. I feel so much better. I was so behind, you know, like I just have fine tuning now. And so I've got, 2.5 months to just really iron it out and get it fast.
Yeah.
I feel really good about it. Plus I get to spend a lot more time with the family and do all that. And, I think it was like two weeks ago, Chris, you had aired that live and threw it on the podcast. And you were talking a lot about your decisions for pulling out of the No Name Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to that at work, and like every statement you were making, like back to back, I was like, yeah, I felt that. I was like, oh yeah, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. You made a comment about how your daughter wanted to play. You were afraid that you didn't have to tell her, like, I got to go work on this rusty piece of shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, little one. And when I had COVID, my son would hear me working in the garage. He's 3.5, and he'd open the door and be like, Dad, are you working on the car? I'm like, yeah, I am, bud. He goes, okay, I get shoes. I'm like, no, stay in the crowd. I can't hang out with you. And like all that, it was real. And of course that was, conjoined with COVID quarantine. So I couldn't go and hug them yet. But it was hard. That was hard. 100%. So now I get to take it easier and plan it and have a good balance between family and then working on the car.
Yeah, man. Last weekend, I was on a lake in a kayak with my daughter, and I was going, man, if I hadn't pulled out, I would be in the garage right now, or actually in my driveway because the car isn't even in the garage, wondering how the hell I'm even going to get this thing, how I'm going to afford fuel. Am I doing this all for nothing because I can't even afford the fuel?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is way better on my mental state, because, when I was knee deep in the project and I was planning 100% on taking the car to No Name, I was listening to my wife make all these plans. Oh, I'm going to get a kayak. We're going to go out with all our friends. You can be at home working on your shit box, and I'm like, I had already made a commitment. So I was like, all right, well, sucks. And I kept trying to tell myself, I don't want to do that shit anyway. And the more I thought about it, and the money really nailed it home. I was like, if I do all this and miss a whole summer of my daughter's life when she's 3 in a fun stage, and I can't even afford to go, and I wasted all that time, it wasn't worth it to me. Not to run once down a track. Because I can do that again next year when my daughter hates me, you know what I mean, or whatever. But right now she's all about hanging out and having a good time. So the fuel cost was, it came at the right point where I was like, I'm not willing to sacrifice this only to fail anyway. I'm not saying that I would have 100%, but looking at the numbers now, I'm still, there's no way I would have been able to make it work financially. And I had planned on selling a bunch of stuff that I had. And even then I was like, man, I still would have been penny pinching. And then when I got back, I'd have nothing. You know what I mean? I would have dumped all that cash. And it's a great event and I encourage anybody to go. But for me and my situation, there's guys out there with grown kids or older kids that don't give a shit about hanging out with dad. I'm not at that point right now. And, unfortunately for me, I had to make the decision and zero regrets because I feel my anxiety level is not there anymore. But like I asked you guys, the question of, did you ever just say, man, I wish I had never, accepted the challenge or even made the challenge? I thought to myself, why did I ever accept a challenge when I didn't even have a car? I should have just laughed at Dustin and said, are you out of your fucking mind, dude?
Yeah.
Pick somebody else, bro. What are you thinking? Do you have an idea for a great new podcast? You can bring your idea to life and start your podcast today with Libsyn. Talking Mopars has been on Libsyn since 2019, and I love it. Libsyn has everything you need to plan, launch, and grow your own podcast. Libsyn provides some of the best resources created by expert podcasters who will show you everything you need to know, like what equipment you should use, how to record great audio, how to get your show on Apple Podcasts and other popular platforms, and much more. Plus, as a friend of Talking Mopars, when you sign up with Libsyn, you get your first month of podcast hosting for free. There has never been a better time than right now for you to start podcasting. Visit Libsyn.com and use code FRIEND, FRIEND. That's LIBSYN.com and use code FRIEND to get started and create your podcast today.
Well, I think initially, because like when Jeremy pitched it to me, it was like, it's just sounds awesome. And then, for somebody doing a YouTube channel, it's like, this sounds like great content.
100%.
So it's all rainbows and unicorns up front, and then you start getting into the thick of it. And I think we talked about this a little bit last night on Ruben's channel, but like, when you do a major thing, like when we dropped the 383 and the big block 727 into the car, it was like we got 80% of the car done, and it felt good. It felt like we made a major accomplishment, but that wasn't jack shit as far as all the work and effort and time and problems that went into the car and expense. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, when I was, say, 18 years old, it's like I could come home from work every day, no wife, no kids, and crawl under a car and pull a motor out, drop a motor in, and you know what I mean? It's no big deal. But being an older guy with wife, kids, work, it's like it's hard to judge how much time that car is going to take and how much effort and all the problems you're going to run into,
Mm-hmm.
And when we raced Friday, I mean, that basically marked those guys going to No Name Nationals. That's your 3-month mark. And it's Jeremy and I have perspective. It's like, we know what it takes to cram a car into 3 months. So it's like, you better have your car pretty far along at this point, because the clock is ticking and it's going to go quicker than you realize, Yeah.
Yeah, and that clock does not slow down because you've got shit going on. You know what I mean?
Looking at the comments, looks like Battery Productions was asking about, from all three of us, what project car do we think was our greatest achievement in getting back on the road? I mean, I built some cars and I've had a lot of time and, a little lot more money to do so. But I think this challenge was definitely my greatest achievement with a car. I pulled it out of a junkyard, raced it down a quarter mile, got a decent time, even in its condition. And there's a couple things I didn't even talk about. Like, I only had one nut on the accelerator pedal. So my gas pedal was like creeping underneath my brake pedal. And I was having to 2-foot it to separate it. So I was panicking about that. And then the morning of, I even called Johnny. I was like, hey, why would my brake fluid be leaking in the cab? Like, what's going on here? Yeah. The master cylinder didn't have an O-ring. So like, all those things that are super small that take all that time, you got to make sure you have all that done way in advance. So like, if you're planning this big thing and you want to get this part because it's a little bit faster, like, take all that into consideration, but get the car running and driving first and then work on some of the speed stuff too.
I would I can confidently say that I failed at every single project with the exception of one, and it's partial, and that's the blue truck, because I bought that truck in non-running condition after it had been sitting for 3 years. All the valves for the air ride were stuck, and I told the guy when I got there, because it was like, I looked at the truck and I was like, this thing, there's no way we're going to get this thing going today. He told me it had been sitting for 3 years. The battery had just been disconnected. And so I said, all right, dude. I had offered him, he wanted $4,000. I had offered him 2 because, you know, that's how I do. And
it's the Mike Coffee way.
The messed up part was when I got there and I saw the condition the truck was in, I was like, shit. I said, I'll give you $2,000 for it, but I have to be able to drive it out of here because I'm not towing it. So I mean, it would have made a fun video. I mean, it was simple shit, but the accomplishment of making the guy an offer, going up there and going, okay, I got to get this thing out of here today. There is no tow, because $2,000 was all the money that I had made on Tin Grill t-shirts in like a 4-month span, and I had to buy a Tin Grill because I was making Tin Grill t-shirts before I even had one. I was making them to buy one, and I bought that truck. Nice. With t-shirt money of Tin Grill t-shirts. And then you know, I what exactly did it need? I know that when we fired it up, I put a new ballast resistor on it. There was a couple loose wires, and when I fired it up, it was spraying fuel everywhere. So I was like, okay, dry rotted fuel hose. So got a new fuel hose. It was pretty simple shit. Oh, and I did end up going to get a battery because the battery was completely fried. But I was just happy because my wife was with me, and the look on her face when she saw that thing, and knowing that I had dragged her out to the country and that I was going to drive this thing 30 miles home. When I got to my driveway, I was like, I breathed a sigh of relief, because on the way, leaving the guy's driveway, I saw him like doing some sort of motions with his hands as I was pulling out of the driveway. I was like, what the hell's going on here? And as soon as it was a pretty steep driveway, and it like immediately popped up onto the road. And as soon as the ass end popped up on the road, I heard bam, and I was like, shit. And then I realized, oh shit, the ass end still is down a little bit. And what had happened was the passenger side rear shock mount or shock busted off, so it was just free floating. And so I had already broke it before I even left the guy's property. And then driving this thing home, steering in that old Tin Grill was like, I mean, I've driven some rickety ass semis in my life. I've driven garbage trucks. I would drive the worst garbage truck on earth before I ever would feel safe driving that thing, because it was all over the road. And then the first time I went to hit the brakes, because I didn't test them in the driveway, I got on the road and I said, oh shit, there is barely any pedal here. I was having to stand on the pedal to slow it down. So that was a problem. So coming to stops, I was like, I'll just gear down a little bit. So I was like, he told me I couldn't take the freeway. He goes, don't take the freeway, it'll rev too high. And these back country roads are like 50 miles an hour, and it's just wrapping out. And I'm like, God damn, I'm going to blow this thing up before I even get it home. Got to the gas station to put some fuel in it, because he goes, yeah, the gas gauge is broken, so I don't even know how much fuel's in it. And I was like, can I make it to the gas station? He goes, well, it's at minimum 3 years old fuel. So yeah, I think so. So I remember shaking the truck when it was still there. And I was like, I think I hear fuel sloshing around. I popped open the thing. I'm like, all right. Got to the gas station, and I was like, what was that noise? And I look underneath, and my shocks just, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So it was pretty much dragging on the ground. I had a sticking valve, because of course I got this truck on air ride, so I'm playing with the switches on the way home, and I get it stuck multiple times in different positions. And I was like, shit, because it had these really bad sticking valves, because this was like back in the airbagit.com days, where you go buy just a universal kit and it's all shit. You know, but I made it home, and I was just happy to finally have a Tin Grill, and I had big plans for that thing. But immediately I started having wiring problems with it, and I ended up selling it midway through a rewire. And I feel bad now, because I didn't give myself enough credit, because I did half of it. So I did everything from the dash forward, and I sold it before I had completed the rest of it. So I'm not, when it comes to electrical shit, I'm not the guy. Like, I'm barely the guy when it comes to anything mechanical. Electrical, that, and to take something on like that when I'm not an electrical guy, even though I had the wiring diagram color coded and it couldn't be an easier wiring kit, like I was struggling. And when I sold it, I was like, man, I feel bad for that guy, to be honest, because I was like, fuck, if he knew how much I suck at wiring, he would just lose his mind. And as it turned out, he wired the truck from the cab back, and he said it was just I had one bad crimp. Everything else worked. It fired right up. All the lights worked. I was like, shit, because I sold it going, God, I don't even want to know what I fucked up on that thing. Yeah. And apparently I did it right. I just had one bad crimp. So, I mean, not an epic project vehicle story because I didn't get it to the point where I want. And that's what happens with me in projects. And that's why I refuse to sell, even though I entertain it every once in a while after talking to coffee. I will never sell the van, my Mr. Norm tribute truck, or this Roadrunner now until I have them on the road and safely running and driving, because I want to be able to finally fucking get one done so I can at least have that accomplishment under my belt, because I either lose interest or just get so overwhelmed. The easiest solution for me is just to sell it. Like all my big block shit, sorry, Johnny, sold it today. It's all gone. It was the last shit of the Dart I had left. And Coffee influenced me on this when I was talking about the Roadrunner, because he said, just get a 440, dude. They're cheap. And I thought, yeah. And I've had this 400 block for the 451 stroker for 5 years. It was funny because I had a guy reach out to me that was interested in everything, because everybody wanted to, because I was trying to see what I could get for it, see if I could at least break even. And as it turns out, I get a memory on Facebook that is me loading the block into the truck to take to my buddy's machine shop. It was 5 years ago. And it just dawned on me, because I was really expecting somebody to reach out to me, maybe offer me less, and me just not take it and go, all right, I'm just going to keep it. I was waiting for an excuse to just keep it, especially with getting the storage unit. Now I got a place to put all the shit. And that popped up. This guy reached out, said he wanted everything. And I was like, all right, this is destiny. I'm just going to get rid of it and start over again. The Dart's gone. That was supposed to be for the Dart. So I'm starting fresh, and it's nice to have some cash in my pocket. And I had planned to sell this stuff to get to No Name, and I still won't have enough money. And I'm like, God, let me put it this way. If I made it to No Name, I would have been, Brian from Dust Devil Garage would have been buying me lunch and shit. I wouldn't have had any money to eat. I'd have been like, hey, Wilburn, any scraps laying around? Can I work in the kitchen for a couple hours, have a hot dog or something? It would have been bad. But that's I guess in a really long roundabout, dragged on story, that's the most success I've ever had with any of my projects. A couple non-Mopars that I've had that I've got running again, but nothing worth talking about. Johnny, I know you got something good. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of.
Listen to him. Yeah, I do. Way better than yours. All right, hit us, Johnny.
No, it's kind of on different levels. Like I think Dorothy is like a huge success, and from the standpoint of like building a really cheap car, huge bang for buck. Like those burnouts that we did in the car are just freaking epic. You know what I mean? Honestly, I don't think I've ever done a burnout like that in any car. That's probably the most badass burnout I've ever done in my life. So, and it's crazy because like everybody loves that car, dude. I get comments on that car all the time. People love the build of the car. It's sort of taking on its own character, you know, and its own persona. So from that standpoint, that's a huge success. I mean, my Coronet, my 68 Coronet, which has been pretty dormant over the last few years, it's my only car that's like painted and running. And even right now, it needs some love. I can't drive it. It's got a water leak, you know. I need a break and I need time to go in there and like fix all the little things that it needs to get it back, you know, to where it's I can daily drive it. That's my beauty car. And then car I don't have anymore, which was I'm a Charger guy. I love Chargers. They're my favorite cars. But this 69 Roadrunner, the blue one that I had, is probably bar none my favorite overall car. It was ratty. It was a beater, but mechanically I went through that car top to bottom and it was so solid and so reliable. It made good power. It wasn't crazy power. It's probably only making about 400 horse, a little less, and just tons of fun. I mean, just tons of fun. I didn't worry about the car. I can leave it anywhere in a parking lot and I can throw it sideways around a corner and not worry about it. So I guess I cheated by having 3 instead of 1, but they're all kind of different,
I always forget, it was somewhat recently when Johnny mentioned the Coronet, and I was like, you got the Coronet still? For some reason, I had thought it went down the river a long time ago. And I'm like, shit, you got all... I was like, how come we never see Coronet stuff, dude?
Yeah.
Do you have any YouTube videos of that car?
Oh, it's funny because when I started, my first videos on YouTube are from 14 years ago, and they're of that car 14, 15 years ago or so. So it was I wasn't trying to start a channel or anything back then. It was just, I took some video of it and I posted it on YouTube so I can send the link to friends like, hey, check out my car on the track,
Mm-hmm.
So, but no, I don't have anything too recent. I think a couple of years ago I took it to a car show, but other than that, no. I've been so distracted. I mean, all this YouTube stuff and Jeremy's stupid challenge. I mean, it's been taking all my time.
I was thinking about this as you were talking, Johnny. For those of you that have watched or listened to this show with the early episodes that I had Jonny Mopar on, he talked about his circle of Mopars and how the rings and how the ones in the center, they're not going anywhere, but the ones on the outside rings, see ya. No problems, no regrets getting rid of them. How many do you have on the outer ring where if you had to sell something or some things this week, how many do you got out there? Because I've got a fun challenge idea. I think you'll like it. It's just a fantasy, but I think it's funny.
All right, I have a 75 tin grill long bed. That's the outermost ring. I wouldn't care about getting rid of. Yeah. I have a 68 Dodge Coronet 4-door that's pretty hammered. I got from my coffee. Traded in some rims and some cash for it. I haven't done anything to the car, so that's probably the next ring, the next outer ring. The 71 Charger I just pulled home. I'm not in love with the car. I wouldn't feel inclined to sell it right now because the whole reason I bought the car is so I can use it as a template to put the 272s I have in the shop that are painted that need reassembly. I can go to the 71 and go okay, here's where the screws hold this in. And this is how it's, the window regulators go in, the glass goes in, all that kind of stuff, mostly interior stuff, because both of the 72s are gutted. And it's it's one of the things I need to overcome in working on the car is I'm not looking forward to trying to figure all this shit out. But with the 71 there, I could just go walk over to the car, pull a door panel and go, oh, okay, that's how it goes. Okay. And then go back, put it back together, So that's probably the 3 outer rings that of cars that I can get rid of, say, in a week. And I wouldn't I wouldn't care too much. And there's probably 2 in the middle ground. One is the 69 Charger, which I just haven't done anything to it, so I'm not vested in it really.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not saying I'm selling it. Calm down, Mike.
But you're not selling. You're not selling. Are you saying you're not?
And then my 72 Charger, which is one of the cars that needs assembly, that's the free car I got the Talking Mopars call in that I did early on.
Yeah.
That would be the other one. That would probably be a middle ground car. I think everything inside of that, it's probably wouldn't get rid of.
All right, here's the idea for the challenge. I've been so intrigued with Chris Thompson and Mike Coffey and how competitive they are. I want them to each pick one of your cars on the outer ring or outer rings and have a challenge, much like the one you guys had. I want to see what those two maniacs could come up with. I think that would be hilarious. One's got to take the 4-door, and then the other's got to take that Hammer Charger you just got.
Yeah.
See what they can do. I think that would be funny. Guys that are super competitive like that and shit talk each other, it cracks me up. I think the dynamic between those two in a competition setting would be hilarious.
I guarantee you they're the kind of guys that would dump $40,000 or $50,000 into those cars that are worth less than $1,000. You'd
have to give them a hard limit and go, okay, we know you guys are gonna fuck around a little bit because you're street racers. Yeah. We'll give you a $10,000 budget, call it 15, or a 5,000 and call it 10.
Yeah,
I would just be curious to see what they would come up with, and what kind of corners they'd cut, and what kind of shit they got up their sleeve.
Yeah.
Taking it to ground one, like when you're picking the car, the whole thought process that was, going on in my head when we first started this, before we had agreed that we were going to use the cars we already had, was I was really excited to find some trashy Plymouth Arrow, something that weighed 2,000 pounds in the junkyard, rip out whatever garbage was under the hood and just stuff a small block. Like that was in my head. I wanted to do just because I felt a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If you do a challenge like this, to speaking to everyone that's listening, and you want to do something like that, you can't do it in 3 months. Just give it away. Take that idea, and unless you got a full team and a bunch of time, don't tackle something that hard for 3 months. But
see, something like that would be fun. Like I'd be excited to do something like that. I would, like say a little like a late 80s Dodge Daytona, or like you said, a Plymouth Arrow or a Dodge Colt or something. Not that you can find them anymore, but like if you could pick up something like that cheap, I'd be excited about doing a build like that. But I would do it completely different than what we did. Like I would not. I think if we were going to do a challenge like that, it would be something like we agree, like just make them the same. Like you pick whatever car you want, or like let's build a little car, So we're not, I'm doing a truck and you're doing an Arrow or something. It's like no, you're doing an Arrow and I'm going to do a Daytona or something, and we're going to both run, 360s. So it's kind of like the same, we're both going to run 727s. We're both going to run 8 3/4, so it's like, there's a lot of freedom to build the 8 3/4 how you want, whatever gear ratio you want, but and not limit it to a dollar amount. But by limiting it to an 8 3/4, it kind of stops us from going, like, okay, well, I'm going to go throw a Dana in this thing, or if you get crazy with the motor, like, oh, well, I'm going to build a stroker. Like, no, we're going to build, stock stroke 360s, like that kind of thing. Like, put some limitations on it, but have a lot of lateral movement and creativity of however you want to build the car.
Yeah. I like that idea. I like the idea of a challenge of long bed tin grills, small block powered.
Yeah.
You pick whatever tin grill you want, but it's got to be a long bed. It's got to have 318.
Yeah. Something like that, I think, because that, when you start, like when we started screwing with the expense, number one, the budget was freaking tight. It was super tight, but then, I don't know. It fueled a lot of paranoia on my end, going through this whole build. And I would have much rather done something like what we're talking about. If we're limited to the stock stroke 360, and then it's like, I don't care what intake you run. I don't care what headers you run. I don't care valve, you have a lot of freedom to do camshafts. Like you could do whatever the hell you want and not really get crazy. You know, your limitation on people spending too much money is you got to run, you know, within these parameters rather than making a dollar limit and then having somebody go, because there's always people like Chris Thompson and Mike Coffey that are super competitive, and they will throw, I think they would throw everything in the kitchen sink at the bill to beat you, you know?
Be a 408 dressed up like a junkyard 360.
Yeah, exactly.
You made that comment, and I thought that'd be kind of fun, but no, no way.
There has to be some sort of limitations and a level playing field. Like I said, 2 long bed tin grills, 2 small blocks, and then a cap on, you know, cost. But then you're on that level playing field. So then it really comes like to the point where you got to start pulling tricks out of your sleeve, you know, pulling tricks out of the hat, to see what you can do. And it's, you know, if you can get the wiring issues worked out on a tin grill, then you should have a good competition.
To answer Joe, I would probably say $5,000.
I was going to say 5.
Given the inflation costs and just where the whole used car market and parts is, I think $5,000 right now would be perfect for it. To have a little flexibility, to have a lot more fun with the speed stuff, but it would still be a big challenge. You know, and aside from like when we're talking about the little cars, right, the Daytonas and stuff, aside from the fun it would be to have a lot more of an even playing field and do it at a competition head to head, imagine how funny it would be. You show up in a clapped out Omni, not even a GLHS or something, just a shit box that everyone brushes off, and you got a warmed over 360 in. Imagine the face of the guy that just bought that $50,000 Mustang 5.0 when he gets spanked by this ugly piece of shit.
Oh God.
I would love to watch. I would watch hours worth of YouTube videos of this ugly 4-door just, you know, cleaning these guys.
Hell yeah.
It'd be so much fun.
Well, maybe we birthed something here. I mean, whether it's long beds or K cars or something, you know, it's maybe we come up with some parameters and start something like that, and then I don't know, meet somewhere. Whether it's
maybe that's next year. Maybe that's the next year Hoopty challenge.
Yeah, and then give a year to build. Like if we wrapped everything up, say like if we came up with something in a month or two, and we kind of feel good about all these parameters, and we go, okay, next year's No Name Nationals, or next year's Duct Tape Drags, or next year's whatever racetrack, or maybe everybody races at their own local tracks, and they just have to, you know, I don't know, honor system, I guess, or something, or have a secondary person, you know, certify that person ran that time, you know.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea. I like that. I don't know. I think an event where, you know, like for the call outs, call outs are cool and stuff, but there is definitely not a level playing field. But if you were to level it, you know, like, okay, Johnny and I are racing, and we both have to race 68 Coronets. 4-door sedans, you know, and you put some real fucking parameters on it. So it's the same car, you know, not obviously the same car, but the same car, same engine platform, everything else, gears, all that shit is different. But you can't open them up, can't punch them out, nothing like that. It's got to be a stock bore, stock stroke, all that. That would definitely that would be interesting.
I think it'd be fun. I like the long bed idea just because, like, one of the beautiful things about our competition was just how cheap it was. You know, I mean, even though we spent some money, it's relatively cheap what we did. I mean, if we could do there's the last affordable Mopars on earth are pretty much like long bed tin grills, you know?
Yeah, you are correct. Even the 4-doors, unless you get somebody who really doesn't give a shit about what they have, you can still get 4-door muscle car era cars for decent price. I've seen them, but they go like that. If you find a 69 Coronet 4-door sedan for $2,000, like I did a couple years ago, it's gone like that. Like you're last in line as soon as even if you think you're the first one to call on it, they're like, I got 10 people waiting this weekend.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, really? You just posted it 6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
There's people like Coffee that are just sitting there like just doing their day job, just looking over, refresh.
Right. I know Mike must be like Homer Simpson at the power plant, and he's just like, he's got like 12 screens and they're all like offer up and marketplace and
Cordobas. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
It would be interesting if a whole event was set up with that, where it's like, say 10 races, 10 set up, like, okay, this is the tin grill race, this is the sedan, this is the wagons, these are the vans, like shit like that. That would be funny.
That would be the class, cool. Right? That would be cool. Like Cordobas would be cool, but there's not enough of them. You couldn't find a Cordoba. I don't ever see Cordobas anymore. The tin grill is the last cheap, plentiful
long bed tin grills.
Long bed. Yeah. It's the only thing that if you didn't have one and you wanted to participate, you could go find one and buy one, and you could probably buy it pretty cheap. Like
the tin grill challenge. Everybody goes to one event with a long bed tin grill, and it's like a bracket, like a 16 truck tournament.
Yeah.
Who's got the fastest small block long bed tin grill?
Yeah, we're talking about tin grills, but like it's actually a fresh wound for me. I just sold mine in November, and I regretted it like 2 weeks after I let it go. And even now, I'm like, yeah, I should have kept that. I sold it too cheap. But they are a lot of fun. And like you said, they're all over the place. And, while everything's going up in price right now, you still see them especially in California, if you get a small geared one, 76 to 80, they're pretty cheap.
Yeah. Nobody wants them.
You can still find them up here.
Yeah.
You can still find them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Where are we at? 2 hours. Guys, is there any last parting thoughts about this challenge and what's coming up?
No. Well, other than we're going to meet at Duct Tape. Honestly, dude, like I'm going to race Jeremy, but I'm going there just to race at Duct Tape and have a good time.
Yeah.
And have no pressure. We're going to get our car on the street and get exhaust on it so we could shake it down and drive it locally, just to make sure everything's worked out of the car, and then dial it in. I want to get it back to Verona soon and actually run it, and then see if we could have beat Jeremy, actually have a time slip. And I didn't even get our time slip because we were being towed. We went right by the little shack where they hand out the slips. So. But Jeremy posted one, so I was able to see our time slip on that, which was abysmal. It's like, I don't know, 20 minutes or I don't remember. But yeah,
I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm excited to go to Duct Tape. I'm excited to see the whole thing. I've never been to either Duct Tape or zip tie drag.
It's a blast.
So, I'm excited to do that. I am excited to run you again, but I'm really excited too to get that eBay Turbo on there and just listen to that bad boy howl.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, as far as the stress level, like, it's just chill. I'm having a good time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that eBay Turbo too, because it's so entertaining every time I see somebody do an eBay Turbo build. The numbers they get out of those things, I'm just like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how long they last, though. I know it's not long, but it's long enough to have fun. Long enough,
A couple things I plan to do for the channel in stock configuration. Once I get all the little things worked out, I am going to take it to a local speed shop here, and they have a dynamometer. So I'm going to sit there and throw it on the dyno and see what it runs. And I plan to kind of throw like an open forum to like all my subscribers, like whoever can guess the horsepower and torque the closest in stock NA, not stock, but NA, we get like a $50 gift card to Summit Racing, and plan to do that before the turbo and after the turbo. Just to have fun with it, see what people can think.
Yeah.
So
I think that'd be sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah, guys. I think we're on to something with this tin grill challenge. I'm not participating in any fucking challenges anytime soon. Let me just say that.
You started it.
I know. As soon as this guy steps in, though, nope, I want no part of it.
Hey, maybe we make it for vans and tin grills.
Just over
except
5,000 pounds.
good luck
Right.
finding cheap vans. Fuck.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I had a buddy that had a van that I could buy for cheap. Yeah, now I can't even. I can't sell the van because for one, I know I'm never going to find one that cheap again. Not without being super lucky, except for the fact that there is an A100 in Idaho with a 440 in it for $2,500.
What?
Yeah, it is a shit box, but it's $2,500. It's got a 440 in it. I mean, I did sell some big block parts, but I can't take on another project right now. As tempting as that would be. It's rotting at the seam between the roof and the fucking body, so it's rough, dude. Yeah, I like this statement right here. What the heck is a tin grill? And then I have a 75 W100. Like, that is a tin grill. So for those of you that don't know what a tin grill is, it's a 1972 to 1980 Dodge truck or Fargo. You know, and if you have a trail duster, that would count too, which is a Plymouth
Or Ram Charger.
72 to 80 are the years. Nope, I'm not accepting anything. All right, guys, I think it's time to shut it down. Let's start with Jonny Mopar. Jonny, where can everybody find your content?
YouTube is the best place. Jonny Mopar, as Jonny Mopar. I still got my Chris Albrecht shirt from the Mats.
Hell
and
yes.
I'm also on Instagram as Jonny Mopar, no space between it.
And Jeremy.
So YouTube as well. That's where like all my serious big content goes. I do have a Facebook page as well as a TikTok, and I do a lot of the fun little stuff on TikTok. But YouTube's kind of the central hub.
So that's where everybody
Mopars
makes those nickels and dimes on YouTube. Hell yeah. Well, thank you all for joining. Guys, I've been up for a long time now. I need to get some sleep, and 2 podcasts back to back. I'm burnt. I was going to open the chat up, but every time I do that and I'm tired like this, it ends up going into deep waters, and then I borrow from Brian and we get into the weird hour. And I had one of those last week, and I had to do 2 weeks ago, and had to do some major editing. So we're not doing that this week. Thank you guys for coming on the show and sharing your experience with the $3,000 challenge. I can't wait to have you guys back for after duct tape. That should be a lot of fun. I would go down there and support you guys, but I've made prior commitments. And I know it'll be fun. I hope if I call Jonny and I say, Jonny, what's going on? You actually answer your phone. When we called you on the live, I was like, something's not right about this. Cause I feel like if Jonny was in a good mood, he'd be like, what's up, man? It just wasn't like you to just, cause Ruben was a little weird. I was like, something's not right here. Okay. Talk to you guys later.
It was chaos. And I did see your call, and I'm like, I couldn't talk to you. We were in the thick of shit at that moment. And I think Ruben came by. He said, hey, Chris is trying to call you. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I can't talk right now, dude.
I had no idea. I figured the race was done. You guys were just hanging out. I wanted to know who won.
Should have been.
Because I was telling people in the chat, I was like, I think Ruben went live at the track. Somebody go look right now and see who won the race. And nobody would respond. I was like, what's going on here? So that's when I was like, I'm going to call him live on the show, and nobody's answering. And then Ruben answered, and he was a little bit weird. I was like, huh. I was like, that seemed a little awkward. It's like, anyways, we won't go down that road. Thank you all for watching. Remember, no Mopar left behind. My name is Chris Albrecht, and this was Talking Mopars live. We'll see you guys on the next one. There you have it, my friends. Another episode of Talking Mopars is in the books. For everything you need to know about this show, you know where to go. talkingmopars.com. And you can reach me by emailing Chris at talkingmopars.com or by leaving me a voicemail on my voicemail box at 209-28-MOPAR, and you just might get to hear yourself on the show. So keep sharing those Mopar stories with me and anything else that is on your Mopar addicted mind. Special thanks to my friends over at DIYHemi.com. If you've been considering swapping a modern Gen 3 Hemi into your classic Mopar, then give my friends over at DIY Hemi a shout and tell them that I sent you. They've supported me from the beginning of this show, and I also support them in their mission to Hemi swap the world. Also, don't forget how important it is to keep your Mopar protected from the elements. If you need protection from your Mopar, don't wait. Head over to TalkingMopars.com, click on the Affiliates tab, and go get your Mopar covered today. Before we shut this podcast episode down, if you want some Talking Mopars merchandise like t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, and cool swag like that, check out the merch shop on TalkingMopars.com. And for exclusive bonus episodes and videos only for my supporters, become a Facebook supporter today and get immediate access to those benefits. That's it, my friends. Until we talk again, I am your host, Chris Albrecht, and that was Talking Mopars.
Thank you for listening to Talking Mopars, your direct connection to all things Mopar. Until next time, remember, no Mopar left behind.